Morning, everybody. Unit 3, Lesson 3, Topic 3. I always need to think really carefully before I say unit and lesson and topic numbers. So today we're going to have a look at program planning. Okay, how to plan the programs. So the programs are getting nice and complicated. They're getting longer and longer all the time. But this, as I mentioned before, we're almost at the end of the semester. We almost can do everything that we need to with the program. Okay, so we're going to have a look at program 61. So we've come quite a while. You've done the planning and wrote quite a few programs already. And for this section, we are merely going to take previous programs, so program 51, and I've modified it a little bit to include the things that we need to know. And I think in the background we can hear Zim. He's upset with me. He'd really like to sit and listen to us, but I think this might be a longish video, so he's gone found to his cage and he's really moaning at us, saying he doesn't like this thing of sitting in his cage today. So we've got a student class. And first of all, the student class now needs to save the student number. The rest of the data is exactly the same. And then there's something new. Student number must be a read-only property. Once you're assigned a student number at VUT, that's your number for life. If you come back after 10 years and you want to continue with some other degree or thing that you want to do, you still use the old student number assigned to you long ago. Okay, so I can't change student numbers randomly throughout the program. Once a number is assigned at the start, that's the number for life. Okay, so student number must be a read-only property. It's only assigned when the object is created in the constructor and thereafter never again. There's some validations. Student numbers are always 9 characters long, and it's always going to start with a 2. And if any validation fails, we need to raise an exception. We're going to see how this is handled by Visual Basic, which we base our planning upon. And most of the other programming languages do more or less the same thing. Once we know how VB handles it, it's really easy to adapt to something like Java. The rest of the stuff is more or less the same, except the default constructor now assigns a student number. I've got a parameterized constructor that takes both the student number and the surname, and a parameterized constructor that takes all of the data. So student number, surname, and the 3 test marks as parameters. The rest of the class is exactly the same. So the increase test, save test, and calculate semester mark methods exactly the same as before. No changes there. Except that we've got some validations, that were added in the previous lesson. So I'm going to have a look at that. Let's then have a look at the planning first. See what would change with the class. And I've got program 61 here. I've updated it already. So we're going to have a look at the changes. And the first change would be over here. So I've got a student number member variable. It's a string, it's private, and this is the new change. I only provide a get property for the student numbers. So people can go and display in an application student numbers in list boxes and labels and whatever they want to, but they can't assign, once the object is created, a new student number. I need some validation, and this would be done in the constructor. So the length must be 9 characters of the student number, and it's got to start with a 2. So I'm going to provide a default constructor, and I'm just going to highlight all the changes as they occur. So I'm not going to update a property. Underscore student number, that we all know would be the name. So I'm updating the member variable directly in the default constructor. And I'm just going to assign the default value to the student number. Like that. So these are only changes in the default constructor. I've got one parameterized constructor that now gets the new, or the student number assigned as a parameter. Again, I'm going to update just the student number. These are not changes, they are exactly the same as before, so I don't want to highlight them. I've got quite a validation that I need to go and perform for the student number. I need to test that it's 9 characters long, then I need to test that it starts with a 2, and then I need to assign. Now I can do this in one or two ways. I can either include these two tests and combine them with an AND. So test that the number is 9 characters and that the student number starts with a 2, or I can do it in separate if statements. When I go show you the program itself, I'm going to explain to you why this approach is maybe just a little bit better. And the reason would be over here. Let's just highlight that part. If I've got separate if statements, then I can modify my message. So one message would say, okay, the student number must start with a 2, and the other message, with the exception that we raise, would specify the student number must be 9 characters. So I tell the user exactly what's wrong. If I combine the two if statements with an AND, then I can merely say the student number is invalid. Either it's not 9 characters long, or it didn't start with a 2. I can specify. So it rather go and do something like this. Specify, and I'm only going to keep the highlighted part. The rest of the method stays exactly the same. I've got a third constructor that again gets the student number as a parameter, and again is going to update the student number. The bad thing over here would be that I need to duplicate this whole validation. So again I need to copy this whole if statement. That's the way that VB does it. We could bypass it to write a private method where the validation is done, but I'm not going to do that with beginners. In Java, which you're going to do in 2.2, this is done thoroughly in the right manner, so we're going to wait a little bit for the Development 2.2 module, where you're going to learn the proper way. Big thing is we don't want to repeat statements in programming. And over here we've got an if statement that we are doing in 2 different methods. So we have to copy the code. So that's actually something that we don't really like and that we try to eliminate as far as possible. But at this stage, while you are learning, that's part of things. Okay, so we are working with that. Okay, this is all the changes to the documentation that we need. That's all the changes though to the class that we need. I'm just zooming out a little bit to show you the two parameterized constructors. Both of them must have the same validation. We don't really need the validation in the default constructor because me, the programmer, I'm assigning a value over there. Okay? And I can have as many overloaded constructors as I want to, as many constructors as I want to, as long as their parameters are different. And I've got three. One with no parameters, one with 2 parameters, and another one with 5 parameters. Okay? So the rules for overloaded methods. So let's just go have a look at that. New term. Overloaded method. We can also in a class code an overloaded constructor or a parameter if I procedure or a function if I want to. Overloaded method have got the same name first of all, but then different parameters. And there is either different number of parameters like we've got over here. One has got 0 parameters, the other 2, the other one has got 5, or the parameter types must be different. So the one, if I've got two methods with the same parameter, the one needs to get a string and the other one an integer, or the one gets an integer and the other a double, something like that. Or then the sequence of the parameters. So the first one gets an int and then a double. We're not going to really have different sequences. And the other one, let's say the overloaded constructor first gets a double and then an int. That's the way that VB and all the programming languages knows that I've got different parameters. Either the quantity, the number of parameters needs to be different, and this is normally going to be the case with you guys, that's beginners. Sometimes the types can be different, and sometimes the sequence. But that's main number one and second reason why we have normally different parameters. So overloaded methods. This is now something like if I code a function, public function do work. Let's say get an integer. Let's go for VB code by val number as integer. Let's say this one returns a double, and then I code a second function that gets a double as a parameter. These are two overloaded methods. They've got the same name, but they've got different types of parameters. So those two methods would be overloaded. Or if I go code something like public sub, let's call it display, and I've got by val number as integer, and then my second display procedure gets also a by val data as string, something like that. So this one gets 2 parameters and that one gets 1 parameter. Here I've got 2 overloaded methods again. They've got the same name. But if I go code something, like this, public sub show by val num as double, then this is not overloaded because the name is different. Okay, it's got to be exactly the same name. Okay, so we were here at the documentation. Just increase the font again so that you can see. If I go back to the class description now, I go to my application. So we need to go to an MDI application, and this time around the user interface are a little bit different. So I've got add students, enter tests, and view students. Let's just look at add student right at the start. I've got to get a text box for the student number, text box for the student name, a label to display confirmation message because that's the nicest for user interface design, and a save button. I would have specified over here the application must use an array of student objects, and I've got to store 20 student objects. And let's just have a look at the save button, what was specified for it in the add student form. We need to get the student number and the surname. We need to create an object using that input data and save it in the array in the next available position. We need to increment the array counter, then enable the other menu options, clear the input control so that the form is ready for the next data entry. We're going to display a confirmation message to the user, and then if an error occurs, we're going to display an appropriate message to the user. Okay, so we're going to take one form at a time and have a look at that specific form's planning. If I then scroll down for my module, and we use a module merely because it's really the easiest to save data that's shared between the different forms. I've got a constant first of all. It's called max. We can see from that capital letters, hey? Constant values, I've got all capital letters in the name. So max, it's an integer and its initial value would be 20, and it's going to stay 20 because I need to save up to 20 students. Then I've got an array. It's called array students. How many elements? 20, because the highest subscript would be 19. 20 minus 1. So it goes from 0 to 19, the subscript values. Oh, this is so important then. The type must be student. Okay, not string anymore, not integer. The array would be of the type student. It's public, no initial value. And I've got, same as with the filled arrays, I've got an array counter. Call it always the same name, then it's easy for you to remember what it does. It doesn't have any initial data. Okay, so that's the first thing. I'm just clearing the highlight. If I now go have a look at form add student, to add the menus, and that processing is really very basic. I told you long ago we don't need to do really a lot. You know that you need to create a new object, child form. You're going to set the MDI parent and you're going to display the form. So I'm not including that really. In form add student, for button save, it's a button click. We need then 2 input controls, one for the student number, one for the name. Okay, I've got another input control for the user message. I'll show you on the screen when we go have a look at it. I'm going to define a local variable for the object that is created. So a local variable, object student. So object student, if you use that, it's always now a local variable in your procedure, in your event procedure. We're only going to share the array and the array counter in the module. So these two things I use from the module and we define them over there. And the steps now, let's have a look at the English steps. So I'm going to declare the variables always. If you can remember, we've got an algorithm for the add part. Let me open that quick. Okay, here I've opened now the array algorithm that I gave you on the right hand side, and on the left hand side we've got the steps, and it is only slightly modified. So I've got to declare the variables. I need the try catch to display the invalid data message. I will test that the array has got space. I'm going to accept the student number and the name. I'm going to create the student object. I'm going to save the student object in the array, increment the array counter, enable the menu items, clear the input controls and put the focus there, and display a confirmation message to the user. The important things, let's just modify so that you can see. There we go, above the video image. So to test if the array has got space, I need to test if the array counter is less than maximum, or then if array counter is less than array name.length, either of those two. When I create the object, I'm going to send the student number and the name. I'm saving the object in the array. I'm incrementing an array counter, and then it's real nice to tell the user whatever was the name or then the surname, it's saved successfully. If I have a problem with the if statement, I need to tell the user, listen, the array is full. And then if something else happens, I just merely use the exception message that we've got. When I execute the program, that part would do the following. So the user can enter a student number, and then let's add validator first of all. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and we go for not long. And not long is saved. And have a look, my message is in blue, just to tell the user, okay, now everything is fine. It says not long is saved. I've cleared the text boxes, control, the focus is on the first, topmost text box. So now if I go enter to, that's too short, nice error message just displayed to the user. It says error, the student number is invalid. It must be 9 characters long. So if I go now for 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I get an error message. The student number is invalid. It must start with a 2. So if I now go and enter a student number, but let's say the name is too short. It says the surname must be at least 3 characters long. Can you see that we're testing that the user entered good data? That surname that was tested, that was the set property in my class. So if I enter a good surname, Nku is saved. And currently if I go to the view part, Matlong and Nku, both are entered, both with test marks of 0, nothing entered yet, and I've got their student number details. If I go have a look at the button save, source code, there's my local variables. I've got a try, catch statement. I'll go have a look at this error message in a moment. I'm testing my array, and either I can use max or I can use array name dot length. Important, I'm going to test for less than, because array counter can't be the same, can't be equal to length. So less than. So either max or length would be perfectly fine, any one of those two. I get the data, create the object, save the object in the array, increment the counter, confirmation message, enable the menu options. I need to start with the name of the form, and then I clear the input and to put the focus on the next. If I had a problem with the number of students that saved already reached maximum, I've got a real nice message now for the user, not just the messages I've saved, but I tell the user you saved 20 students already, can't save anymore. Okay, so that's button save. If I go have a look at the next, we've got a enter test form. I need a combo box to select the student, a list box where I want to display the marks of the student, a text box to enter the test number and the percentage, a store test button, and an increase test button. We'll see how that. Remember now, these are just the basics, and me as a programmer, I need to arrange them neatly on the form. It's not displayed over here, so you can use your own judgment. If I go have a look at the processing of the enter test form, there's some initial processing. So right at the start, populate a combo box with the student numbers and the surnames of all students so that we can see that. I've got a store test button. I'm going to get the index of the selected item from the combo box. This is also the index of the object in the array because it's added in exactly the same sequence. If my index is valid, I'm going to display the test marks of the student. This is actually a little bit late. I want to show you what I did. We're going to get the test number and the mark. That must be updated. We're going to update the right data for the student, display a confirmation message, and redisplay the test marks of the students in that list box. If there's any exception, I'm going to display a message to the user. So let's just have a look at that part first of all. I decided to design the screen as follows. There we go. So I can add the tests of the students. I see the different test marks, and I've included another group box where we can actually go and increase a test. And let me run this application now first of all. Okay, so now if I enter or open the enter test marks form, right at the start, I've got the data of the first student. If I choose Nku or Motlong, I've got the data. So we can enter the test number, and I've replaced the combo box. No, I've used a numeric up down in the previous program. I just replaced it with a text box for now, just to make this program a little bit easier for us to work with, but it's really very welcome to go and use a numeric up down still. It would be better. If I enter a test mark, and let's go with 60 for my test 1, I've got a confirmation message. Immediately the data is updated. I can now enter test 2, and let's go for 70. There we go. The moment that I choose Nku, I still have 0 for the test. If I choose Motlong, I've got my test marks. if I go, say I want test 1 to be incremented by 10%, it was 60 and it changes to 66 now. Okay, and I've got my confirmation message over there. If I go view the data, we've got 66 and 70 for mod long, and still has no data. The moment that I go back to enter tests, this is one of the changes just to make the user interface better. The moment that the student is selected, their test marks are displayed to the user. So the moment that I enter test 3, let's go for 80 for mod long, there we've got it, 66, 70, 80. And if I go choose Nku, it's zeros. If I choose mod long, 66, 70, 80. So let's just go enter 1 mark for Nku. Test 1. Let's go for, no, not the same, 66. Let's go for 71. So there I've saved the 71 and the 71 only. Okay. So my data entry form for the tests works perfectly fine. It's per student, not per test though. Okay. If I now open my planning, I first of all decided to add a procedure that we're not specified. Okay, we can add as many as we need to. So procedure show tests that just display the 3 tests of the students. So it gets a parameter. It's called student index, just to make the name nice and descriptive. And it's going to display all the 3, the student tests, at index whatever was sent as a parameter. And have a look, there I've got the first test, the second test, and the third test. Display that. So that is displayed in that little list box right top, where the 3 test marks of the student would be displayed. Okay, I get the parameter that tells me what's the index, and I display those 3 tests. So for form load, in form enter tests. Okay, I want to display in a combo box some data. I've got a counter. You're very often going to, anywhere where you're going to use a loop, you need a local variable, and you always call it count, because that, if you've always used the same name, it's rather nice and descriptive. So array count we're going to use from the module. Let's just highlight that in green. An array count always tells me how many I've got. But this counter variable that I specify, it tells me while I'm traversing the loop, what's the next loop counter that I'm using. So I need to loop array students from the start to the end, and then I need to add the number and the name to the combo box. So my VB code would be something like, for count from 0 to array count -1, to the combo box add array student count, the number and the surname, and that gives me the data that you see initially. It's done right at the start in the form load event procedure. Then we've got the button to store the tests. So I'm accessing the combo box to get the index, and then the test number and the mark from text boxes, and I'm displaying a message to the user. And my steps would be something like this. Declare the variables, and I'm updating data, so I always need a try catch statement. I'm going to get the index from the combo box. I'm going to test that the index is valid. I'm going to get the student number and mark from the text boxes. I'm going to change add student index, this index that I got from the combo box, the test mark for that specific test, and there's already a method that I can call in the class. It's called save tests. They're going to display successful message. I'm re-displaying all those 3 tests for the student, the 3 test marks, and I'm going to clear the input box. If the index wasn't valid, I'm just going to display a wrong index message. Okay, so the VB code would look something like this. Combo box have got a selected index property. I can call that and I can store that. This gives me 0, 1, 2, and it's exactly the same number as what the indexes for the array would be. I'm just going to validate, make sure that it is valid. It should be always good, but we're double checking there. And then for that specific index in the array, there's a dot. I'm calling the save test mark, save test method, and then I'm calling the method that I coded already. Send the index to display those 3 tests to the student. If I go have a look at the update button, the button to increase a test that we also have on the form, let's just have a look at the description thereof. Processing for increase a test. Again, I need to get the index from the combo box. Again, if the index is valid, I'm going to get the test number and the percentage. I'm going to update the data. I'm going to display the marks, and if an exception was raised, I'm going to display a message to the user. So I've already showed you this form small. So the index I'm still going to get from the combo box. I've got 2 different text boxes, one that's called increase test number, another increase test percentage. If I go quickly back to the form, these 2 text boxes over here. So steps would be declare the variables. I'm going to get the student index from the combo box, test that the index is valid. I'm going to get the test number and the mark. And now, with the array student at the index, I'm going to say, let's call it update. The test mark for the test, I'm going to call the method. So if I have a look at the VB code, it's still the same code to get the combo box index. Still the same code to test that the index is valid. Over here, I'm now going to call the increase test method. Send the number and the percentage along. Again, display the test marks of the student. If the index was wrong, I'm going to display one message. And if in my exception, I just display the exception message. So if I go have a look at the source code, first of all for button store tests, exactly the things that we discussed, except my messages are now nice and descriptive. Incorrect student selected. So the message box that showed takes a few parameters. I can either only stop there, or we can specify a few more things. So if you have a look, it tells me next I can specify which button I want. Do I want an accept button or an OK button? There are, let's just do it again, 10 different show methods that I can call. I prefer the one where we've got a title, a caption. If I press a comma now, we can specify which button. Let's just move the code up a little bit, still like that, so that my picture doesn't get in the way. I want only an OK button. And then lastly, I can choose which icon I want. So we're going to say show an error icon to the user. Just makes the dialog box that we show nice and descriptive to the user. If I call increase test, then this time around I call the increase test method for the student. Which one? The one in the array. Which array index? The index selected in the combo box. Okay, this program is complicated, so take it one step at a time. First make sure the add works, then the view works, and then you can go for the rest of the things. I did include one or two things. So if I double click on the form load event procedure is created, and over here this is where I've got the loop to display the student details in the combo box. And really a nice thing is if I, after the loop, display the selected index. So if I go delete this and run the program, you're going to see what is the difference. I've entered the data already. If I now go to enter tests, have a look, nothing is displayed in the combo box. If I now go and enter some data, click on store test, my error message to check that the index is good is displayed. But this is not nice to the user. User must now first go and select a student, okay, before the data is displayed. So if I want to do that immediately, soon as the student data is displayed, if I go select from the combo box, selected index and set that to 0, then the first student is automatically displayed in the combo box. The other nice thing, if I double click here on the combo box, an event procedure called selected index changed is displayed. So the moment that I call that, I am calling the show tests method that I've coded to display the 3 test marks, and I'm sending the index of the combo box as a parameter. If I do this, then the 3 marks for the student would automatically be displayed as soon as that student is selected in the combo box. Okay, so lastly we have form view students. We need a list box to display the data. We've got a view semester marks button, and increase all tests, and a display the higher semester mark button. If I go have a look at the initial processing, so right at the start when the form is loaded, we need to display all the student data in the list box. When I click view marks, I again need to display all the student data in the list box, 1 student per line. Oh, this is, sorry, view semester marks. I want to see all the semester marks per student, surname and mark. I've got a increase the test button This is now for all the tests. I need to get the test number and the percentage, and then update all the students' data, and obviously redisplay everything in the list box. And I need to be able to see the highest semester mark. So, quite again, a few things that's going to happen. Let's have a look at the program itself first of all. Okay, I've entered all the data, so if I now go to view students, I can see the test marks, same as last, 66, 70, 80, and second student we've only entered 71 for test 1. So if I go view all the semester marks, then currently the first student I've got a 72 semester mark, second one only 23 because I've only entered 1 mark yet. So if I again want to view the student data, I've just added this button to the form so that I can see all the data. If I display the highest semester mark, then it's obviously highest mark would be student 2001, mod long with the 72. If I want to increase all the tests, so test 1 must be increased by, let's go for 10% because that's nice and easy. The 66 and the 71. 66 changed to 73, 71 changed to 78. There we've got the data. Okay, so now let's see what happens. Right at the start, when the form is loaded, we need to go and display all the data. Let's go have a look at that first. So, I've coded a procedure show student that gets an index again as a parameter, and it's going to first of all just save that object from the array in a local variable, and then it's going to display all the data. The local variable is just to make this code a little bit shorter. Instead of saying array students index dot surname or dot student number or dot test1 dot test2, I now use object student. I first save the data. Let's just move this up a little bit so that my picture doesn't maybe obscure the data. So in form load, I'm going to have a loop, and I'm going to call show student for the loop counter. This will call the method that I just showed and will display all of this data, the student number, the surname, and the 3 tests in the list box. Then I've got button view semester marks. I've got 2 local variables, a counter and object student, and I'm using the array and the array counter always. So declare the variables, loop from start to end, and I'm going to display the name of the semester mark. So I'm going to do it like this. For count 0 to 1, get that object from the array. I very often like to just save it in a local variable and now use it. So display the surname, display the semester mark, and the semester mark I get from the calculate semester mark function, and to display it neatly I call the toString method, and every object that we've got has got a toString method. We provide our own for the student class, eh? If we have a look at button increase all tests, then we need to get a test number and a percentage. This is really from the algorithm again. I need to declare the variables. I'm updating data, so I need a try catch. I get the test number and the percentage from the user. I've got one loop to increase all the tests, and I've got another loop. Oops, here there we go. By accident moved a little bit away, sorry. I've got one loop to display, to increase all the tests, and I'm just going to use a second loop to again display all the updated student data in the form. I will most probably just, this isn't added over here, but we'll need to clear the list box before I do anything like that. So here are my VB statements. That's important. I'm going to get the test number and the percentage. I've got a loop from 0 to 1. The dot is not always so easy to see, so let me just highlight it. For array students, position count, I call the increased test method, and this is done in the loop, so this would be executed for all the students. And again, I've got a loop to go and display all the students in the list box again. And if there's some exception, we are making provision for that. If I go have a look at button highest, and again I gave you an algorithm for that. So based on that algorithm, I've got my steps. Declare the variables. I'm going to assign 0 to the highest index. I'm traversing the array from position, not the start, but one after the start to the end. And now I'm testing, important, whatever data I've got. So this would be the semester mark that I need to test, eh? So array students of the current position, that's count, that data. I'm going to test against array students of highest index, that data. So now I can sort the students in student number sequence, in name sequence, but for this one the data is calculate semester marks value. So call calculate semester mark. That's why I include only data there. You call what you need to, either a property or a method to return data. So I'm looking for highest. That means I need a bigger than. If the current data is bigger than the highest that I've got this far. Hey, that's what this line says. If the current data is bigger than the highest that I've got this far, then all I want to do is save the new highest index. And in VB, Java, all the other languages, I'm just going to save count as the highest index. Now, it remembers the position of the highest thing. And then after the loop, I know high index have got my data. So again, I'm saving it first, and now I can display the student number and I can display the mark. This is optional, this high index save thing. The only other thing that I can maybe show you that's of interest would be here in this form. The form view student. I'm actually going to call that, let's just decrease the font a little bit. Have a look for two things. I've got a button on the form where I want to view the student data, and it's got to do exactly the same as what happened right at the start. So instead of recoding all those statements, I can specify that either when the form is loaded or when the button is clicked, I need to execute these statements. And it's in VB, it's rather simple. You add a comma, you add the name of the button, so button view student data, and it would be a click event procedure. So now this happens in either of the situations. Either when the form is loaded, this was automatically added, or I can specify when the button is clicked. I also want to do that part. Okay, this is an extremely long program, so take it little at a time. Go code first of all the view student form just to display the student data in a list box. Then you go have a look at the save button. You can do that with the planning as well. First go have a look at the view. Now at add. To only do those things. All those array algorithms are so important. I try to give you algorithms for basically all the things that you can do. You need to adapt them sometimes a little bit, but somewhere you will find an algorithm for anything that would be asked. So take the algorithms, study them very carefully, and use them as the basis of your planning always. So, good luck. Program 63, 64, and 65 are yours. You need to just go and update the old programs for now. Good luck.